We're back with another Week 5 Stardom Situm running back edition alongside our 1 through 24 rankings. And it was a good week coming off of these running backs in these Week 4 matchups. We saw Christian McCaffrey almost touch that 50 mark. I mean, at least in my league, in my PPR league, he almost hit that 50 mark. Did not quite do that. We did have him as our running back 1, which, again, it was probably the safest option heading into these weeks. But let's go ahead and look at these Week 5 rankings that we have for this upcoming week. And looking at this list, again, these are some of our stardom options in these 1 through 12. And Dalton, who do you like here? Who is your most favorable matchup in these numbers 1 through 12?
Yeah, someone that I'm really liking is who we currently have at our number 4 spot right now, and that's David Montgomery versus Carolina. I'm really loving this matchup that the Lions have. David Montgomery's been averaging about a 70% snap share right now, despite Jahmyr Gibbs being in the lineup. He last week had 32 rush attempts for 121 yards and 3 touchdowns versus Green Bay in his week 4 finishing. So after that, he finished as RB2 in PPR fantasy. Running back 2, that's pretty damn good. So he now has a touchdown in each game he's played this season. So from a fantasy perspective, I think that's something to ride high on about. So this week, the Lions are going to be taking on Carolina in Detroit, so this is going to be a home game for them. They've played pretty well at home this year. So Carolina has struggled tremendously versus the run this season, surrendering 545 yards, which also on top of that, 4.7 yards per carry, which is pretty high. And they've given up 6 touchdowns on top of that, which is tied second most in the NFL for touchdowns given up through the first 4 weeks. So the Lions will be in the red zone early and often is what I'm expecting. So Montgomery should have plenty of goal line work this week again versus the Panthers, just like he'd had versus Green Bay last week. So Montgomery should continue to be the go-to guy for the Lions, with Jahmyr Gibbs being the change of pace back. And so I'll be looking forward to another multiple touchdown performance with possibly 20-plus PPR points for Montgomery this week in Week 5 versus the Panthers.
Yeah, I wanted to start Montgomery so bad this last week, but he was kind of that game time decision on a Thursday against the Packers, and I was just like, I think I'm going to ride it one more week, and let's ride with Gibbs. And
don't lie.
Sat on my bench.
You don't lie. You didn't start him because he was playing the Packers, and you want to root for somebody on your fantasy team because you're a Packers fan. Don't lie to us.
How the bias just bites us all.
You're not wrong. That was an internal conflict that I was having, but it was also mainly because he was that kind of a game time decision. But anyways, looking back at this list, my stardom for this week is DeAndre Swift versus the Los Angeles Rams. Los Angeles Rams actually have a very good rush defense. They're not very good. I think that was kind of an overstatement, but they are right in the middle of the pack. They do have a good defense. With rush yards, they are top 5 in receiving yards allowed. I've only allowed 41 total receiving yards to the running back position, as well as only 2 touchdowns to running backs, and then top 10 in fantasy points per game to the position as well. So Rams have a very good defense, and where I see, though, that this is still going to work out in DeAndre Swift's favor is that the Eagles currently run the most out of any team in the NFL. I know that that's mainly because of Jalen Hurts and company, but DeAndre Swift, we have now started to see these last couple weeks that he is assuming those running back 1 roles for them, and he is just producing like no other, and that's very good to see. I am a fantasy owner of him, and I have been loving it these last couple weeks. So now he has had 3 straight games of 15-plus fantasy points and 18-plus opportunities in those 3 weeks as well. So I'm excited for him going into this matchup versus the Rams. I think it is going to be a high-scoring matchup, and the Rams are close in every single game, so I do expect DeAndre Swift's getting continuous work throughout the entire game because he continues to dominate in his yards per touch. He entered week 3 at number 4 in all of running backs at 6.4 yards per touch. And this last week, he just finished just shy of 5 yards per touch against the Washington Commanders in week 4. So I do expect, again, he's going to continue to show that dominance versus this Rams defense. I know that they've been good against the rush, but it's the Philadelphia Eagles and that offensive line who is so good. So I do expect that to continue for DeAndre Swift moving forward.
And I agree. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media with people who are, say, fantasy football gurus who, after Swift had his first big game and then followed it up with the second big game, a lot of people were like, you need to trade Swift, get value out of him while you can. Do not do that. Do not trade DeAndre Swift whatever you do, do not trade him. You need to keep that man on your fantasy football team, because if you watched him against the Commanders, that offense runs through DeAndre Swift, and they are very excited to have him there. And it's if Nick Sirianni feels like that's the missing piece that the Eagles have been missing, and that's a big, powerful running back in DeAndre Swift. So whatever you do, do not trade DeAndre Swift. You keep him.
Yeah, and I think that they're just trying to find their identity with their offensive coordinator going out of town, and they named Brian Johnson as the new offensive coordinator, and it looks like they're a lot more run dependent. We starting to see that take an impact on AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So I think that DeAndre Swift and running backs have been taking full advantage of that. So yeah, I don't know, maybe an identity thing there.
Yeah, I tell you what, if the Lions haven't been this successful yet in their run game this far, I think they would have heavily regretted getting rid of DeAndre Swift. That is definitely somebody you want to hang on to for fantasy purposes, because he's going to be good for a while there. So
yeah, poor Rashad Penny owners. He hasn't done a dang thing, and I guarantee you he's on a lot of waiver wires, as he should be. So I don't know. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the second part of these rankings, 13 through 24. Nathan, you have a stardom here in these rankings, and which one do you think has the most value heading into week 5?
I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. And I know there's been some issues there with just the offense in general, but I've seen what the Packers have given up. Sorry, DJ. Saw what the Packers gave up at home to the Lions. So I really believe that if the Raiders can get in the red zone once or twice in that game, look for Josh Jacobs' touchdown. The Packers have given up some touchdowns on the ground, especially in the red zone. They gave up quite a bit to Montgomery on Thursday night. So if they can get in there, I don't know if Garoppolo is going to be playing or not. We haven't heard on that yet. But if they can get into the red zone and get things moving, I really could see Josh Jacobs getting in the red zone a few times. So that's who I like there. And sorry to break your spirit down a little bit there, DJ, but
hey, it's all good. We are on the up and up. We've had some high highs as Packers, but we've also had some pretty low lows, and losing to Detroit at home is a pretty low low, but it's nice to see us fighting every week in and week out. So again, these are our running back rankings 1 through 24. So as always, there are some people who did not make this list, and it's not because they are on a bye week. This is the first week of bye weeks, but it's not because of that. It's because we do not like where their matchups are, and those are our sit-ems. So again, Dalton, who is your sit-em for these week 5 matchups at the running back position?
Oh, boys, as much as this one's going to break my heart, I think the person that I don't like that the matchup with is Najee Harris. I don't like this matchup. He's currently coming into week 5 against Baltimore. This Baltimore defense is no pushover. They are ranked top 10 in both rush yards allowed and yards per carry. So they are not going to be giving up big chunk plays. Najee is going to have to work for every blade of grass out there on that field. So I've noticed that Jaylen Warren also has been progressively getting his snap percentage increased week after week, starting at like 40% versus San Fran to 43% versus Cleveland to now 45% versus the Raiders. So I'm not sure what his snap percentage was this past week, but I know that progressively over time, he's been getting more and more and more. So the more Jaylen Warren gets involved in this offense, the more concerned I become for Najee Harris. So considering this is also a pretty historic rivalship between the Ravens and the Steelers, I'm not too leaning so heavily for Najee Harris. I'm expecting the Ravens to get ahead early, and the Steelers are going to have to rely heavily on their pass game and their receiving back in Jaylen Warren. So I'm going to kind of stay away from this game here with Najee Harris. I'm not liking what I'm seeing and where the things are heading in the direction they're going with him and this team. So right now, I think this is just a good time to just stay away until the storm passes. So.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like you brought up with Jaylen Warren, you see his snap percentage go up, but it's crazy because Najee Harris was such a prospect coming in from college, and he has just not amounted to anything. He's currently 20 spots lower than Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren was at 29 in all his running back, his position, and Najee Harris is 49. So in Najee Harris is running back 1, Jaylen Warren is not. So it's kind of insane to think that, but I do agree with you, especially in this matchup. It's something that you stay far away from. So my sit-em for this week is we're sticking on the Green Bay train, and it's actually A.J. Dillon versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I am so out on him. I just, watching him as a fan, you can tell that his production is not there. He's not exactly what he used to be. And I'm not sure if that's more so on him or if it's all of the injuries and everything up front with our offensive line. Because, again, looking at how he's performed over this season, his highest week was 7.3 points. Last year, he used to be someone that you could throw in as a flex position and have valuable numbers coming up, depending on the matchup week to week. And versus this Raiders defense, that would potentially be one of these matchups because this Raiders defense is so bad against the rush. They are bottom 10 in total rushing yards to the running back position. They have only allowed 2 touchdowns to the running backs, but then also fantasy points, they're also bottom 10. So looking at that, you would assume that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon would be able to put up good work, but I just do not trust Green Bay Packers O-line to really amount to anything and to really get A.J. Dillon going here. So I would just, even with the 4 teams that are on bye, I still feel like I have to find a way to keep A.J. Dillon on the bench this week and just stay far away from him. So that's my sit-em for this week. Not really big on him. Kicking it to you though, Nathan, who is your running back sit-em for week 5?
Antonio Gibson. And that's, coming into this year, a lot of people, Eric Bieniemy said that Antonio Gibson looked great in camp, and they looked to try to get him the ball some and try to split the backfield with Brian Robinson. But from what I've seen in the first couple of weeks, and then especially in the Philadelphia game, Brian Robinson is him. He is the guy in Washington. He's just their guy. And Antonio Gibson, he still comes in and gets plays here and there, but it's not enough to keep on your fantasy roster probably. And I if you're going to go with the Washington running back, Brian Robinson's the guy there. They used him extremely well in the Philadelphia game. He got his touches, he got his touchdowns, and I like him, and that's why I'd stay clear of Antonio Gibson, because not only do I like him, but the Commanders likes him as well.
Yeah, Gibson, he's just like in that situation with Najee Harris that we were speaking about earlier, where he's just slowly starting to lose the team. His highest finish was 8.3 points in week 2, and then ever since then it's just slowly dwindled. He's had one game over 60% snap percentage, and it's just you can tell that they've kind of given up on him, and it's likely his last year there and kind of on his way out.
Well, I feel like that was kind of how it was at the end of last year too, 2022. It felt like he was more talked about in the realm of being more of a specialist in the special teams realm, and that's kind of where he was going when Brian Robinson busted into the seams. And it seems like it's kind of shifted. It seems like the narrative hasn't changed coming into 2023. It seems like this is still becoming more and more Brian Robinson's team. So I think that's a good comparison there that you made. I think that's exactly what's happening. We're seeing these newcomers come in and they're starting to, outperform these veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, these are our running back stardom sit-ems as well as our running back rankings 1 through 24. So again, hopefully you found some value in this. Hopefully you make the right decisions, and hopefully week 5 treats you a lot better than week 4, unless you won in week 4 and you can have a repeat. Anyways, thank y'all so much, and we will see y'all next time.